place in public, and how much of this analysis we wish to take place a little bit more discreetly. If there is careful analysis of the measure-countermeasure sort of situations, do we want to move to a system where we have public awareness that such an analysis is taking place, some public awareness of some of the major outlines of the analysis, but yet at the same time remain confidential about some of the details, some of the specific technical issues involved, on the grounds that publication of those issues would not contribute to the public debate, but might offer an advantage to someone who wished to use those systems.
Can I ask just you a question? Do you think in bioweapons the advantage is to the offense or the defense?
I'm not sure. I would say that in biology, it looks as though for some, the plant kingdom has been at World War III with the animal kingdom for some hundreds of millions of years, and it looks as though the advantage right now is held by the animal kingdom if you look at who's eating who.
Well, I'm afraid that would not agree with the scientific consensus.
The audience will have its say afterwards.
Well, I just want to comment on what Bill Joyce said earlier, that it's quite clear that the shields are more dangerous than what we're shielding from. I don't think that's clear at all. We have one example of a self-replicating non-biological entity which exists today. It's a completely new type of entity. It didn't exist a century ago, which is computer viruses. And they are out of control once they're unleashed by some malevolent soul. They can't be retrieved. Now, it's true that computer viruses don't threaten us in the same way that a self-replicating nano-engineered entity would. But if we use this as an example, it's nonetheless potentially destructive. I mean, you could describe where a computer virus out of control could completely snarl our communication networks and render our computers useless and overwhelm them. We do have primitive immune systems. They're pretty effective. The damage from computer viruses is considerable. I saw an estimate recently of billions of dollars, but that's less than 1% of the benefit of information technology. It's, in fact, a pretty trivial damage compared to the benefit of the computational technology that we have. Is at least one encouraging example that even simple immune systems can deal with these issues. The recent break-in at these e-portals, the immune system was basically just the general reaction of the government and of companies, which was very, if anything, an overreaction, but nonetheless very quickly dealt with the problem. Y2K, a lot of people felt we overreacted to that problem, but nonetheless there was tremendous effort. There were some real Y2K issues, and it's impressive that this motley collection of state governments and corporations and third world countries and government agencies actually were able to deal with the problem as effectively as they did. So we do have an immune system in terms of our human communication, which is increased by things like the internet. Our ability to deal with the first example of a non-biological reproducing entity, the computer virus, I think is encouraging.
I have a scenario that I'd like to ask both Hans and Ray about to see whether they agree with it. Everyone is here probably familiar with the Tinker Toy computer that Danny Hillis made. It was a computer made from Tinker Toys. What was interesting about that was that essentially this was a computer that somebody could have made hundreds of years ago if they had thought of it. And so my question is, here's a scenario. The year is 2100, and there's... It's 100 years from now, there's two guys and their friends, and they discover in some basement somewhere, packed away, two Pentium, 500 megahertz machines, or a bunch of them, in storage somewhere, brand new. And they decide to see if they could make the AIs that exist at that time using these very primitive machines. And they actually succeed. Do you think that's plausible? But that basically, if somebody came back from the future and knew how to do it, that they could take the existing hardware right now and do it now?
Well, I don't know if the existing hardware is quite enough or not, but there's undoubtedly a search space, and within that search space there are intelligent things that you would classify as intelligent, and there may well be somewhere in that space one that doesn't require that much computing. But I think the amount of memory that's needed to if you want to talk about human-level intelligence, is probably too small in existing machines. We probably need terabytes rather than gigabytes. But
yeah, I don't think you can come remotely close with contemporary machines to emulating anything like human or even other animal intelligence. I do agree with Hans that you can reduce the computational requirements if you model things at a different level. Rather than trying to model every interneuronal connection, neurotransmitter concentration, you actually model things at a more systemic level, systems of neurons, and try to emulate them. You could do that with less computation. But if you look at what the human brain is capable, even based on what we understand today, just human vision vastly outstrips contemporary hardware. The sort of massive computation that we anticipate is necessary, but I agree, not sufficient condition for emulating that level of intelligence.
Yeah, in fact, Ray reminded me of sensory, which I think we couldn't emulate. You might still be able to do a Turing test passer.
Well, I don't think so. I think you can pass the Turing test without being able to master sensory level intelligence. And I think our ability to, for example, be emotional, get the joke, be funny, understand the plot of a movie, or even understand a book, which doesn't require the sensory input because it's a relatively trivial amount of data to just accept the text of a book, does require the subtlety of human intelligence, and again, just the scale of our massive parallelism, 100 trillion-fold parallelism, is one of the necessary ingredients to achieve that kind of subtlety.
Although I think it's basically a question of data compression. You might have been surprised that the subtlety of some intricate painting could be compressed by a factor of 1,000 before modern data compression methods were found. And it might be that there's such a compression method that squeezes just enough that it can fool people. So there's a... Anyway.
I'd just like to actually direct a question to Bill. When I said the point about, my feeling was that software functionality had not followed the Moore curve, Ray subtly shifted it into productivity for producing software. I think the question is, does the operating system, for instance, that we have now look like a Moore's curve different from the operating system that we had 30 years ago? I'd like to hear, since Bill works directly in that kind of thing, or did, I'd like to hear his point.
Its size seems to be Moore's law, but its function seems to be... Its size is growing as Moore's law, and its function is fixed.
Well, Bill, while you're on the hot seat, I'd like to ask you another question. When I read your Wired article and listened to your talk here today, I was sort of taken by the relinquishment option as being the most attractive. But I'd like